Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. The Kandahar Field Hospital smelled of antiseptic and sand. Henry Winters stripped off his bloody gloves, the fourth surgery in 6 hours. 28 years old, 5 deployments as a combat medic, and he still couldn't get used to the waste of it all. Young men torn apart by metal and ideology. "Doc, you got a sat phone message," called Stuart Gill, a fellow medic. Civilian line. Henry's stomach tightened. Civilian messages during deployment meant one of two things: death or disaster. He'd left his wife Candace and 7-year-old son Danny back in their Phoenix suburb 3 months ago. The deployment was supposed to be his last. 9 months, then retirement to a quiet life teaching emergency medicine. He grabbed the phone and saw a video file from an unknown number. The message attached made his blood run cold. "Your neighbor, Francis. 911 won't come. He's a cop. Your boy needs you." The video loaded slowly over the satellite connection. When it played, Henry's world shattered. His son Danny, small, fragile Danny with his mother's dark hair and his father's gray eyes, was being dragged across their front lawn by his hair. The man doing it was massive, 6'3" at least, with a shaved head and a cop swagger. Danny was screaming, trying to pry the fingers from his scalp. The man yanked harder, lifting the boy partially off his feet, and dragged him toward the house. In the background, Henry saw her. Candace, his wife of 9 years. She wasn't calling for help. She wasn't intervening. She was standing in the doorway with her arms crossed, watching. When a man threw Danny inside, she simply turned and followed. Henry played it again and again. His hands didn't shake. His breathing stayed even. That's what 5 deployments taught you. How to function when your world was ending. "Stuart," he said quietly, "get Marcus Bruce on secure line." Now, Marcus Bruce had been his squad leader in Iraq, then Afghanistan, then back to Iraq. Now a sergeant in the Army's discreet rapid response division, the unit that didn't officially exist, the one that handled problems the Pentagon couldn't acknowledge. The connection crackled. "Winters? What's wrong?" Henry explained in clipped sentences. Marcus listened without interrupting, a skill that had kept their unit alive through 3 tours. 12-hour flight home on emergency leave, Marcus said. "I can expedite the paperwork. You'll be wheels up in 2 hours. Or." Henry knew there was an or. There was always an or. Marcus paused. "Or I can have an asset team at your house in 8 minutes. 3 operators, Phoenix-based, owe me favors. They'll extract your son, secure him with your neighbor, and babysit the situation until you arrive. Your call." Henry's mind raced through scenarios. 12 hours. Anything could happen in 12 hours. The man in the video, that level of violence, the casual cruelty, wouldn't stop at dragging. And Candace. God, Candace had just watched. "Send the team," Henry said. "Tell them to record everything. I want documentation. Consider done." And Henry, Marcus's voice dropped. "When you get home, we need to talk about this cop. I'm running his face through databases now. If he's dirty, and I'm betting he is, we can make this very unpleasant for him. I'm counting on it." Henry ended the call and stared at the desert night through the hospital tent's opening. Inside him, something was changing. He'd spent 5 years in war zones, saving lives, patching wounds, pulling men back from death's edge. He'd been the good guy, the hero, the healer. That man was gone. 11 months earlier, Henry Winters met Candace LeBlanc at a VA hospital fundraiser in Phoenix. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep, beautiful, confident, with an easy laugh that filled rooms. He was fresh off his 3rd deployment, carrying invisible wounds and looking for something normal. Their courtship was a whirlwind. She said she wanted stability, safety, a man who wasn't like her cop father who'd abandoned the family. Henry, exhausted from war, wanted peace. 6 months later, they were married. A year after that, Danny was born. The cracks started small. Candace complained about his deployments, but she'd known he was Army when they met. She spent money faster than he earned it. Her pharmaceutical job provided luxury she claimed they deserved. But Henry noticed the credit cards, the designer bags, the unexplained absences. "You're paranoid from a war," she'd say when he questioned late nights. "I'm building a career. Someone has to, since you're always gone." He let it slide. Maybe she was right. Maybe PTSD was making him suspicious. So he deployed again, burying doubts in purpose. Present day, the asset team, 3 former Delta operators Marcus worked with, reached Henry's house in 7 minutes. Their body cameras captured everything. Daryl Downs was exactly what the video suggested. A corrupt Phoenix PD officer with a god complex and a service weapon he liked to wave around. The team's background check revealed a disciplinary record buried under blue wall protection. Excessive force complaints, evidence tampering allegations, a sexual harassment lawsuit settled quietly. He'd met Candace at a traffic stop 6 months ago. She'd been doing 70 in a school zone. Instead of a ticket, she'd given him her number. Their affair started fast and burned hot, fed by Candace's taste for danger and Daryl's narcissistic need for conquest. The operators found Danny locked in his bedroom, bruised ribs, split lip, terrified. They extracted him to Frances Rhodes's house next door. Frances, a retired schoolteacher in her 60s, had been watching the abuse escalate for weeks, torn between helping and fearing retaliation from a cop. Your wife brought him home 3 weeks ago, Frances told the team. Said her husband was deployed and she needed a real man. The boys started showing bruises. I called CPS twice. They said with Officer Downs vouching for the family, there was no case. The operators stayed, watching the house. They recorded Daryl slapping Candace during an argument about money. Recorded her laughing it off, then kissing him. Recorded them drinking, ignoring that a child was locked upstairs, displaced from his own home. By the time Henry's emergency transport landed at Sky Harbor Airport 16 hours later, he had 40 pages of documentation, 6 hours of video evidence, and a rage so cold it felt like clarity. Marcus Bruce met him at the airport personally, a breach of protocol that spoke volumes. "The boy's safe," Marcus said, gripping Henry's shoulder. "Your neighbor's got him. Good woman. The operators are maintaining overwatch." And Downs, career criminal hiding behind a badge. Excessive force complaints going back 7 years. 3 suspects died in his custody, ruled justified, but the pattern's ugly. He's also skimming from evidence lockup. Cocaine, prescription pills, cash. My sources say IAD's been building a case, but can't make it stick because he's got friends in high places. Henry's jaw tightened. What friends? District Captain Rod Walls, for one. They grew up together, cover for each other. Walls has buried 4 internal investigations on Downs. It's a whole corrupt network. Then we burn the network. Marcus smiled, a predator's expression. Now you're talking my language. But first, you need to see your son. Frances Rhodes's house smelled like cinnamon and safety. When Danny saw his father, the 7-year-old broke into tears and sprinted across the room, slamming into Henry's chest with enough force to knock the breath from both of them. Dad, I'm sorry. I tried to be good. I tried. Chill. You didn't do anything wrong, buddy. Nothing. You hear me? Henry held his son, feeling the small body shake with sobs. Over Danny's shoulder, he saw the bruises on the boy's arms, the split lip, and his vision went red. Frances brought coffee while Danny clung to his father. The asset team, Byron Norman, Victor Wolf, and Garrett Byers, had taken up defensive positions around the property, professional soldiers on American soil doing what soldiers do, protecting the innocent. I should have done more, Frances said, her hands trembling around her mug. But he's a cop. They all protect each other. I was scared. You did exactly right, Henry assured her. You got word to me. You kept Danny safe when it mattered. That took courage. What will you do? Henry looked down at his son, now sleeping against his chest, exhausted from weeks of fear. Whatever it takes. That night, after Danny finally settled into restless sleep in Frances's guest room, Henry sat with Marcus and the team in her living room, planning. Straight approach won't work, Byron Norman said. He was the team's tactical leader, a man of few words and perfect execution. Downs has the department. We go to IAD, Walls buries it. We go to the DA. They'll say domestic issue, wife's rights, you're deployed and paranoid. Plus your wife will claim you're unstable, Victor Wolf added. PTSD soldier threatens cop boyfriend. Media spins it. You lose custody, maybe get arrested. So we get creative, Henry said. Marcus, You said Downs is skimming evidence. What kind of evidence? Drugs mainly. Cocaine from busts. He's shorting the weight, pocketing the difference, selling it through a dealer named Jimmy Bautista. We've been tracking it but can't prove chain of custody. An idea formed. Dangerous. Illegal. Perfect. What if we could prove it? With video, testimony, everything. How? We can't get into evidence lockup. Henry smiled for the first time since seeing the video. No, but Downs can. Over the next 2 hours, they crafted a plan that would make Downs's corruption impossible to hide. But it required patience, precision, and one more element, bait. Your wife, Garrett Byers said. She's the key. If we can flip her, get her to testify. We can't, Henry interrupted. She's too far gone. I saw it in the video. She's not a hostage. She's a participant. Then we use that, Marcus said. Let her think she's won. Meanwhile, we build our case. The next morning, Henry called Candace from Francis's house. His voice was calm, measured, the voice he'd used to talk dying soldiers through their fear. It's me, Henry. Candace's voice was sharp with surprise. What, you're home? You can't be home. Emergency leave. We need to talk about Danny. Silence. Then, Danny's fine. He's with Francis. The bruises say otherwise. He fell. Kids fall. You wouldn't know. You're never here. I'm here now. We're going to settle this. You, me, and your boyfriend. Face to face. He heard her breath catch. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. Tomorrow noon, our house. Just the three of us. We'll discuss custody, divorce, everything. Like adults. Or I can involve CPS, lawyers, and make this ugly. Your choice. Another pause. He could almost hear her calculating. Fine. Noon tomorrow. But Daryl stays. I wouldn't have it any other way. Henry hung up. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You're walking into a cop's territory, alone, to confront him about abusing your son and sleeping with your wife. He could shoot you and claim self-defense. He could try, Henry said quietly. But he won't, because I'm going to give him exactly what he wants, a scared husband begging for scraps. And while he's gloating, we're going to destroy him. How? Henry laid out his plan. It was risky, possibly insane, and absolutely brutal. When he finished, Byron Norman whistled low. That's either genius or suicide. Sometimes they're the same thing, Henry said. Let's make sure it's genius. At 11:45 a.m., Henry Winters walked up the driveway of the house he'd paid for, where his wife had welcomed another man in his bed, and knocked on his own front door. Daryl Downs answered, wearing a tight black t-shirt and jeans, his service weapon visible in a hip holster. He was bigger up close, 6'3", 220, all muscle and arrogance. His smile was a predator's grin. So you're the husband. Candace's war hero. Daryl looked Henry up and down dismissively. Smaller than I expected. Henry was 5'11", lean from deployment rations and desert heat. Next to Daryl, he looked almost slight. Good. Let him underestimate. Can I come in? It's your house, Daryl said with mock courtesy, stepping aside. For now. The living room had changed. Henry's military photos were gone from the walls, replaced with abstract art Candace had always wanted. His reading chair was missing. Even the smell was different, Daryl's cheap cologne overwhelming the space. Candace sat on the couch, legs crossed, wearing a red dress that Henry had never seen. She looked good, confident, almost defiant. Henry, you look tired. 5 deployments will do that. He sat across from them, deliberately non-threatening. I won't drag this out. I want to discuss Danny, divorce terms, and how we move forward. Daryl draped an arm over Candace's shoulders possessively. What's to discuss? She wants a divorce. You give her one. The kid stays with his mother. You go back to playing soldier. Danny stays with his mother, who let her boyfriend abuse him. Abuse. Candace's voice sharpened. He fell down the stairs. Stop being dramatic. Fell. With bruises shaped like fingers on his arms. Split lip. Locked in his room for hours. Daryl leaned forward. You calling me a liar, Winters? I'm calling you exactly what you are. Henry's voice stayed calm. A corrupt cop. A child abuser. And a dead man walking. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Daryl's hand moved toward his weapon, but Henry didn't flinch. You threatening an officer? stating facts. IAD has 47 complaints against you. 3 dead suspects. Evidence of you skimming cocaine from the lockup. I have video of you dragging my son by his hair. Assault on a minor. That's a felony, badge or no badge. That's ridiculous, Candace said, but her voice wavered. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. IAD Detective Clarence Valentine has been building a case against Downs for 8 months. He just didn't have the final piece. Now he does. It was a bluff. Henry had never spoken to anyone named Clarence Valentine. But the name was real, pulled from Marcus's intelligence. Valentine was a real IAD detective who'd been trying to bring Downs down for years. Daryl stood, his face flushing. You're full of shit. Valentine's got nothing. He's got everything. Video from my neighbor's security camera. Medical records from Danny's school nurse. Financial records showing Candace's sudden spending increase. Designer bags, jewelry, that dress. On a pharmaceutical rep salary? Please, you've been bankrolling her with dirty money. Candace's face went pale. You're making this up. Am I? Then why did 2 men in suits visit your office yesterday, asking about your relationship with Officer Downs and unusual cash deposits? Another bluff. But Candace didn't know that. She looked at Daryl, panic creeping into her eyes. You said this was safe. You said no one could touch you. They can't, Daryl snarled, but doubt flickered across his face. Henry stood slowly. Here's what happens next. Danny stays with me. Full custody. You sign the papers. Candace gets nothing. Infidelity, child endangerment. And Downs? You resign. Quietly. Take your pension and disappear. Because if you don't, IAD will move on you, and I'll make sure every news outlet in Phoenix has the video of you assaulting a 7-year-old. You're insane, Daryl said. I'm a combat medic who spent 5 years in war zones. I've seen things that would break you. Doing what needs to be done to protect my son? That's not insane. That's Tuesday. Daryl pulled his weapon, not pointing it at Henry, but holding it loose, a threat. Get out of my house before I arrest you for trespassing and threatening an officer. Your house. Henry smiled coldly. Check the deed. My name. My mortgage. My sacrifice while you played house with my family. Get out. Henry walked to the door, then paused. 48 hours, Downs. After that, the video goes public, IAD comes knocking, and your protection evaporates. Think about it. He left, walking calmly to his rental car, knowing Daryl and Candace were watching. 2 houses down, Byron Norman sat in a surveillance van, recording everything through a directional microphone. Got it all, Byron said through Henry's earpiece. He pulled his weapon. That's brandishing. You were unarmed, non-threatening. Good. Phase 2. That night, Henry met with someone he'd never expected to need. Oscar Simons, a journalist for the Phoenix Tribune who specialized in police corruption. Simons was in his 50s, gray-haired, with the weathered look of a man who'd spent decades fighting losing battles against institutional power. Combat medic turned whistleblower, Simons said, studying Henry across a coffee shop table. Not the usual sources I work with. Desperate times. Daryl Downs assaulted my son. I have proof. But he's protected. By rod walls. Yeah, I know the story. Been trying to nail those 2 for years. Walls buries everything. DA won't prosecute. Classic corruption. Henry slid a tablet across the table. Video evidence. Audio of Downs threatening me with his service weapon while I was unarmed. Medical records. Financial documents showing unexplained income. It's all there. Simons watched the video of Danny being dragged by his hair. His jaw tightened. Jesus. That's a child. My child. Can you use this? If I can corroborate it. Cops have sued me before for libel. I need multiple sources, independent verification. This could take months. I don't have months. I need pressure on Downs now, before he does something worse. Simon sat back, thinking, there's another angle. Downs has a dealer, Jimmy Bautista. Small-time coke dealer who suddenly started moving serious weight about 6 months ago. My sources say it's coming from police evidence, but I can't prove chain of custody. What if you could? Then Downs and Walls both go down. But how? Henry leaned forward. What if Bautista decided to cooperate? Testify against Downs in exchange for immunity? Bautista would never flip. He's too scared of retaliation. People change their minds when presented with the right motivation. Simons studied Henry carefully. You're planning something. Something I probably shouldn't know about. Probably not. But in 48 hours, I'll have Bautista ready to talk. When I do, will you be ready to publish? If the evidence is solid, yes. But Winters? Whatever you're planning, be careful. These guys play dirty. So do I, Henry said. I learned from the best. The next step required Marcus's specialized skills. That night, they visited Jimmy Bautista's apartment, a rundown complex in South Phoenix where dealers sold openly and cops rarely came unless it was on their payroll. Bautista was exactly what Henry expected. Mid-20s, tattooed, with the paranoid eyes of someone who knew his life expectancy was measured in months. When Byron, Victor, and Garrett kicked in his door at 2 a.m., Bautista scrambled for a gun that Garrett had already secured. What the hell, man? I paid my protection this week. We're not here for protection money, Henry said, walking in behind the operators. We're here to talk about Daryl Downs. Bautista's face went from scared to terrified. I don't know nothing about no cop. Sure you do. He supplies you with cocaine from police evidence. You sell it, split the profit. Nice arrangement. Except Downs got greedy. Started shorting your supply, keeping more for himself. Man, I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus dropped a folder on Bautista's coffee table. Inside were surveillance photos. Bautista meeting with Downs, exchanging packages, counting cash. Phone records. Text messages. We have everything, Marcus said. Enough to send you away for 20 years. Or what? Or you testify. Tell the DA exactly how Downs has been stealing evidence and using you to launder it. You get immunity, witness protection, and new start somewhere far from Phoenix. You're crazy. Downs would kill me. Walls would make sure I never saw trial. Henry crouched down to Bautista's level. They're already planning to kill you. You know too much, and Downs is sloppy. IAD's closing in. When they do, he'll tie up loose ends. You're the biggest loose end he has. Bautista's hand shook. Why should I trust you? Because I'm offering you a choice. Cooperate and live, or stay loyal and die. And unlike Downs, I don't need you dead. I just need him exposed. I gotta think about it. You have 24 hours, Henry said, standing. After that, the offer expires, and this evidence goes to IAD without your immunity deal. Your call. They left Bautista in his apartment, surrounded by evidence of his own crimes, facing an impossible choice. But Henry knew human nature. Survival instinct always won. While waiting for Bautista to break, Henry discovered something that made the whole situation infinitely worse. Francine Farrell, a social worker who'd been assigned Danny's case after Francis's CPS reports, reached out through Marcus's contacts. She had information, but was scared to go public. Officer Downs has been involved in 3 other domestic situations, Francine said, meeting Henry in a park where they couldn't be overheard. 2 women filed restraining orders. Both dropped them after visits from Captain Walls. 1 woman left the state. The other disappeared. Disappeared? Officially, she moved to California. But her family hasn't heard from her in 2 years. They filed a missing persons report. It went nowhere. Henry felt ice in his veins. What was her name? Amy Bryant. She was Downs' girlfriend 3 years ago. Worked as a waitress. Young, pretty vulnerable. Sound familiar? You're saying Downs is escalating. I'm saying he's dangerous. And your wife might be in over her head. Henry didn't care about Candace anymore. She'd made her choices. But Amy Bryant deserved justice. Do you have the case files? Copies. Unofficial. If Walls knew I was sharing this. He won't. But I need those files. And I need you to testify when the time comes. Francine handed over a flash drive. Everything's on here. But Mr. Winters? Be careful. Downs isn't just corrupt. He's a sociopath. He enjoys hurting people. That night, Henry read through Amy Bryant's case file. The pattern was sickeningly familiar. Love bombing, isolation, escalating abuse, then silence. Her last known contact was a text to her sister. If something happens to me, it was Daryl. 2 days later, she was gone. Henry called Detective Clarence Valentine directly, using Marcus's contacts to get the number. Valentine was surprised, but intrigued. I've been trying to nail Downs for years, Valentine said. But he's careful. Always has alibis. Walls protects him. What if I gave you Jimmy Bautista as a witness? And proof of evidence tampering? And a possible homicide? Valentine's voice sharpened. What homicide? Amy Bryant. I think Downs killed her. And I think I can prove it. That's a serious accusation. I'm a serious person. Meet me tomorrow. I'll show you everything. The next day, Jimmy Bautista called. His voice was thin with fear. Okay, I'll testify. But you gotta protect me, man. Downs finds out, I'm dead. You're already protected. Pack a bag. Someone will pick you up in 1 hour. Marcus's team extracted Bautista to a safe house, where Valentine interviewed him for 6 hours. The dealer spilled everything, dates, amounts, locations. He handed over text messages, recorded conversations, even a ledger where he'd track payments. This is gold, Valentine said afterward. Downs is done. Walls too, if we can prove he knew. He knew, Henry said. But we need more than Bautista's word against the captain's. What do you have in mind? Henry smiled. A confession. On tape. From Downs himself. Ow! Leave that to me. Getting a confession from Daryl Downs required making him feel invincible, then watching him destroy himself. Henry's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Make Downs believe he'd won. Through Candace, Henry sent a message. He was dropping everything. The custody battle, the evidence, the threats. He was broken, defeated, going back to deployment. Candace could have the house, and Downs could have her. All he wanted was one last conversation with his wife to say goodbye. Candace, relieved that her comfortable life wasn't ending, agreed immediately. Downs, cocky and certain of his victory, came along, not as protection, but to gloat. They met at a bar, neutral ground. Henry arrived looking exhausted, defeated, with slumped shoulders and hollow eyes. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. I'm glad you came to your senses, Candace said, trying for sympathy but landing on condescension. This is better for everyone. Danny needs stability, and you can't provide that. I know, Henry said quietly. I'm not cut out for this. The civilian life, the responsibility. I should have stayed deployed. Downs leaned back, smiling. Took you long enough to figure it out. Some men are meant to be providers. Others are meant to take orders. He signaled the bartender for another round, paying with cash that Henry recognized as evidence for Bautista's descriptions. Your wife needs a real man. Your kid needs a father who's actually present. You're right, Henry said, and the words tasted like poison. I just want to make sure Danny's taken care of. He will be better than you ever could. And Amy Bryant? Did you take care of her too? The temperature dropped. Downs's smile vanished. What did you say? Amy Bryant, your ex-girlfriend. The one who disappeared 3 years ago after texting her sister that you were dangerous. Candace looked confused. Who's Amy? Downs's hand moved toward his weapon. You need to shut your mouth, Winters. Or what? You make me disappear too? Like Amy? Like the evidence you've been stealing? Like all your problems? I don't know what you think you know. I know everything, Henry interrupted, and his defeated posture straightened. The exhaustion left his eyes, replaced by cold fury. I know about the cocaine. Jimmy Bautista's already talking. I know about the evidence tampering. IAD Detective Valentine has a case file thick enough to bury you. And I know about Amy Bryant. What did you do to her, Downs? Where's the body? Downs stood, his face flushed with rage. You're wearing a wire. You bastard. You're recording this. No wire. But there are 7 security cameras in this bar, 3 pointing at our table. And Captain Valentine's team is sitting in a van outside, watching everything. Henry stood to match him, no longer playing weak. You're done. I'm a cop. They'll never touch me. You're a criminal in a uniform. And your protection just evaporated. Captain Walls? He's being arrested right now for obstruction and accessory after the fact. Bautista flipped. Valentine has everything. Your career, your freedom, your life, it's all over. Downs's hand went to his gun. In a crowded bar, in front of witnesses, he drew his service weapon. Put it down, someone screamed. But Henry didn't flinch. He'd faced insurgents with bombs and rifles. One corrupt cop with delusions of power didn't even register. Shoot me, Henry said quietly. Go ahead. Murder me in front of 20 witnesses and 7 cameras. That'll really help your case. Downs was trembling, not with fear, but with rage at being outsmarted. He wanted to pull the trigger. Henry could see it in his eyes. Byron Norman's voice came through a hidden earpiece. We're moving in. 5 seconds. You destroyed my son's innocence, Henry said. You stole my family. You murdered Amy Bryant. And now you're going to pay for all of it. The bar door burst open. IAD detectives poured in, weapons drawn. Drop the weapon. Officer Downs, drop the weapon now. For a moment, Henry thought Downs might go out in a blaze of stupidity. But survival instinct kicked in. He lowered the gun, dropped it, and put his hands up. This is bullshit. You provoked me. You all saw it. We saw you draw your weapon on an unarmed civilian, Detective Valentine said, cuffing Downs. Daryl Downs, you're under arrest for evidence tampering, distribution of narcotics, assault with a deadly weapon, and suspicion of murder in the disappearance of Amy Bryant. You have the right to remain silent. Candace stood frozen, watching her world collapse. Henry turned to her, his voice devoid of emotion. Divorce papers will be delivered tomorrow. You get nothing. Danny stays with me. If you contest it, I'll make sure every detail of your role in his abuse becomes public record. Sign the papers, disappear from our lives, and maybe you can salvage something. Henry, wait. We're done, Candace. We've been done since you watched a man drag our son by his hair and did nothing. He walked out of the bar into the Phoenix night, leaving his old life behind. The next 3 weeks were a cascade of falling dominoes. Daryl Downs, facing overwhelming evidence and no protection, tried to cut a deal. He'd testify against Captain Walls in exchange for reduced charges. But the DA, finally free from political pressure, refused. The video of Danny being dragged, the medical records, Bautista's testimony, and evidence tampering were damning enough. Then came the biggest break, Amy Bryant's body. Following a tip that Henry had coaxed from Downs's own bragging, caught on those bar security cameras, investigators searched a remote property in the desert that Downs co-owned with his brother. They found Amy buried in a shallow grave, killed by blunt force trauma to the head. Forensic evidence tied Downs to the murder scene. His DNA, his fingerprints, his lies all unraveled. The case went from evidence tampering to first-degree murder. Captain Rod Walls tried to claim ignorance, but his phone records showed 47 calls to Downs during the investigation periods. His bank records showed unexplained cash deposits. Most damning, Francine Farrell testified that Walls had personally pressured her to drop Danny's case and threatened her job if she pursued it. The entire Phoenix PD corruption network began to collapse. 5 more officers were implicated. The city council launched an independent investigation. Local news ran with Oscar Simons's expose, and the story went national. Henry gave one interview, sitting beside Danny in Francis Rhodes's living room. My son deserved protection, Henry told the camera. Instead, he got betrayed by the people sworn to protect him. I didn't come home for revenge. I came home for justice. There's a difference. The interviewer asked if he regretted how he'd handled things. Not for a second. I'd do it again. I'd do worse. Because nobody hurts my son and walks away. The interview went viral. Combat Medic Destroys Corrupt Cop became a rallying cry for police accountability. Henry received thousands of messages, support, gratitude, shared stories of abuse. But the most meaningful message came from Amy Bryant's sister, Roberta Lyon. Thank you, she wrote. We never stopped looking for Amy. We knew Downs killed her, but we couldn't prove it. You gave her justice. You gave us closure. Thank you for not letting him get away with it. Henry kept that message. It mattered more than all the viral headlines combined. Candace signed the divorce papers without contest, too terrified of public exposure to fight. She moved to California, leaving Phoenix and her past behind. Henry didn't forgive her. Forgiveness required remorse she'd never shown, but he let her go. She wasn't worth his energy anymore. The custody hearing was a formality. With documented evidence of child endangerment and complicity in abuse, Candace lost all parental rights. Danny was Henry's son, legally and completely. 6 months later, Henry and Danny lived in a smaller house in a quieter neighborhood. Frances Rhodes lived 3 doors down, their chosen family, the grandmother Danny deserved. Henry retired from the military with full honors and took a position teaching emergency medicine at a community college. No more deployments, no more war zones, just him and his son building something real. Danny was in therapy, working through trauma with a child psychologist named Dr. Cora Buckley, who specialized in abuse survivors. The nightmares were less frequent. The smiles came easier. He'd started playing soccer, making friends, being a kid again. "Dad, can we go to Uncle Marcus's house this weekend?" Danny asked one evening over dinner. "He said he's teaching me how to fish." "Sure, buddy. That sounds great." Marcus Bruce had become a regular presence. Uncle Marcus to Danny, a brother-in-arms to Henry. The bond forged in combat extended into civilian life, proof that some connections transcended circumstance. The legal proceedings reached their conclusion in October. Darrell Downs was convicted of first-degree murder, evidence tampering, drug distribution, assault, and 7 other charges. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. "Your badge doesn't make you above the law," the judge said during sentencing. "Your actions betrayed every principle law enforcement stands for. You're a disgrace to the uniform, and you'll spend the rest of your life paying for what you've done." Downs showed no remorse. He stared at Henry across the courtroom, with hatred still burning in his eyes. Henry stared back unmoved. He'd seen evil in war zones, in places where morality went to die. Downs was just another monster who'd finally been caged. Captain Rod Walls received 15 years for obstruction, evidence tampering, and accessory after the fact. 3 other officers pled guilty to various charges. The Phoenix PD underwent massive reforms, and Detective Clarence Valentine was promoted to lead Internal Affairs Expanded Division. Oscar Simons won a Pulitzer for his investigative journalism. He sent Henry a bottle of expensive whiskey with a note, "For giving me the story of a lifetime. More importantly, for getting justice." But the real victory came on a random Tuesday evening when Danny asked, "Dad, can I show you something?" They went to Danny's room, and he pulled out a school assignment, an essay titled My Hero. Henry read it, his throat tightening. "My hero is my dad. He saved people in the war, but he also saved me. When I was scared and hurt, he came home and made things better. He showed me that good people fight for what's right, even when it's hard. He showed me that heroes don't give up. My dad is the strongest person I know, and I want to be like him when I grow up." Henry pulled his son into a hug, this small boy who'd survived so much. "You already are like me, Danny. You're brave. You're strong. And you never gave up, even when things were terrible. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you too, Dad." That night, after Danny fell asleep, Henry sat on his porch with a beer, watching the stars. He thought about the journey, the deployment, the video, the rage that had driven him home, the careful planning, the risks taken, the system that had tried to protect a monster. He thought about Amy Bryant, buried in the desert, finally at peace. He thought about the other victims Downs had hurt, the ones who'd never gotten justice. And he thought about Danny, sleeping soundly for the first time in months, safe in a home where violence and fear didn't exist. Revenge, justice, protection. The lines between them blurred in the moral gray of real life. But Henry knew what he'd done was right. Not clean, not pretty, not by the book, but right. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "IAD shut down 2 more corrupt precincts. Your case started a wildfire. Good work, brother." Henry replied, "Just protecting my family, like we always did." He finished his beer and went inside, locking the door behind him. Tomorrow Danny had soccer practice. Next week, a parent-teacher conference. Next month, maybe a camping trip with Marcus. Normal life. Peaceful life. The life he'd fought for, both overseas and at home. Darrell Downs rotted in a cell. Candace lived in exile. The corrupt network burned. And Henry Winters, combat medic, father, protector, had finally come home. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.